Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Inner Racer. Now for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Aaron, and for this year I decided to fulfill a lifelong dream of becoming a racing driver, racing in the UK's Caterham Roadsport Championship. And the reason I started this channel is to document my journey along the way. So if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I did about 2/3 of the season in total, but I just wanted to create this video as a review of the season itself, just share how I thought it went, share my experiences, and just really reflect and share what I would do differently if I was doing another season, and the main lessons I've learned from fulfilling my dream of becoming a racing driver. So in a nutshell, I'm 36 years old. I live in London, and you know, I would call myself a regular guy. You know, I have a relatively okay job in London in technology sales. But I would say that out of everything in my life, out of all the aspects, you know, motorsport has always been a massive passion of mine. I'm someone who is really big on goals and writing them down and making them a reality. And I just want to show you one of the goals I had that was very important to me. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is my part of my goals phone album on my phone. As you can see, I put this picture on my phone in May 2015, and 7 years later, I made that dream a reality. So it just goes to show you, you know, if you're committed to achieving your goals, you will do what you can to achieve them. So, how did I start racing? The week before Christmas in 2021, sat on my sofa in my living room alone, in self-isolation due to a worldwide phenomenon, name ending in 19. So I had a lot of time to contemplate. For some reason, something just told me that I needed to go racing in 2022. I can't explain it. There was just like a voice within me that was telling me to do it. And I don't know if any of you have had like a similar situation, but the voice was so strong that I just could not ignore it. Something inside of me was telling me to embark on this journey. So I decided to do some investigation and some digging into the Roadsport Championship. Saw that it looked quite good, quite attractive, fitted in with my budget and what I was looking for, etc. So then I did some research on looking for the car, and found a car that was already in Roadsport specification and went to visit it, and then I had an idea of how much it was going to cost me. Did some more inquiries about the championship itself. I just went away and thought about it for a few weeks. Put all the numbers into Excel, into a cash flow spreadsheet, the scenario planner function in Excel became my friend, because it's a massive commitment in racing, which I'll go into later, not just in terms of time, but resources, money, etc. So I wanted to make sure that I was making the right decision. Then I went to see the car again, took it for a test drive, and after speaking with other people, like I spoke to my girlfriend, spoke to my dad, so I decided to go for it. Bought the car, signed up for the championship, and then it was all systems go. So to be honest with you, by this time it was late January, early February, and the first race was only 2 months away, or pretty much 8 weeks away from when I got the car, which when it comes to embarking on a motorsport season is extremely late, I would say. I know now that some of my fellow racers have been doing testing from the winter previously, so from late 2021. By that time I hadn't even decided to become a racing driver, or let alone race in this particular championship. So the heat was on. I had very little time to prepare for this. So I had to get my license, my racing license, which I got in early February, buy all of my equipment, do a lot of research into my race gear. So I bought that. What else did I have to do? I also had to work out where I was actually going to store the car permanently and how I was going to get it to and from races, because I live in a regular flat in London. I don't have a garage or a driveway, so I signed up for this championship and bought the car without even knowing how I was gonna take the bloody thing to and from each race. But I just wanted to get started, and I knew I could work that out as time went on. So I had so many things to do, but in the end, I reached out to a couple of people that were racing in the championship on Instagram to ask, what are the essentials that I need really. So I bought those. I did 2 track days in the car before the first round of the season. So my first ever test in the car was on a freezing cold February morning, Saturday morning on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, and that's where I took the car out for the first time. And then I did another one at Snetterton a few weeks later in March, and then that was it. I had a few weeks till the first race. I didn't sit in the car again until Friday testing at Brands Hatch for the first round. And so probably that segues perfectly into the first round of the championship at the Brands Hatch Indy circuit in early April 2022. So I remember just being really excited in the week up to that first race weekend. Slightly nervous but excited at the same time. And I just remember driving to Brands Hatch really excited in my little 1 Series hatchback, which I had an awning in, a basic toolbox, a couple of fuel cans, a tyre pressure. It's a device that worked as a tyre pressure monitor and a tyre inflator in one, and a torque wrench, and that was the extent of everything I brought with me, and some snacks of course. But literally that was it, along with a few other accessories like latex gloves for protection and so on. That was all I had. So I pull up to Brands Hatch at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily, thankfully, the team at Caterham provided some pre-race information, so I knew roughly where I needed to go. But I'd not met any of my fellow racers, or anyone or barely anyone from the race team up until then. And in terms of me getting my car to the track, I decided to use a service provided by Caterham, whereby they store and take your car to and from each race and do a spanner check on the car between each round as well. So the car was there and ready and waiting for me when I got there. But it was a very, very surreal experience, and I was just very happy to be there, to be honest with you. But it was when I got there that I realised the scale of what I was about to embark on. There was me in my little car with just a couple of tools. I had some. I think I was only one of 2 or 3 people that had not raced the previous year in the academy. Everyone else had raced in the academy, so they knew what they were in for. So everyone had trailers, motorhomes, a wide array of tools, and my first impression was, what on earth have I got myself into? But Friday testing went well. I just literally jumped in the car. Everyone was very friendly to me and very helpful, which was the main thing. But I just literally jumped in the car over the course of, I think it was like 4 or 5 20-minute sessions that day, and was just loving it. Just getting to know the car, getting to know the car, getting to know the circuit. And before I knew it, Friday testing was over, and I was just really happy to be there. I think I got to the track at like 7 a.m, didn't leave till maybe 7 or 8 p.m. But luckily for me, Brands Hatch is only a 20-minute drive away from my house where I live in London. So I was able to sleep in my own bed for that weekend. And so the next day was the big day, the first race day of the weekend. So in the Caterham Roadsport Championship, qualifying race 1 on Saturday and race 2 on Sunday. So I actually very much remember the drive to Brands Hatch on that Saturday morning before qualifying, and then race 1 later in the day. And I think it had been raining the night before, but the sun was shining, and I just remember driving. I think I'd just come over the Dartford crossing actually, and was driving along that road there and getting almost a bit emotional. I'm not gonna lie, because the enormity of what I was about to do had hit me. It'd been my dream to race cars for so long, and here I was about to embark on my first ever qualifying session. And yeah, I probably did share maybe a tear or two. I wasn't bawling, but I did get a bit emotional coming to the track. But then when I got to the track, it was time to get back in the game and start qualifying. So I remember that we were the Caterham Roadsport Championship were the first session out of the day. I mentioned it was sunny, and when I first got to the track, it looked very wet. And as we went onto the track for qualifying, it still was damp in places, so quite treacherous. I remember immediately there was a red flag because a couple of people had come off track in the first instance. So there was that to deal with, and just learning to keep my focus during those situations. But and then after that red flag period and we went back out again, I just really literally focused on driving, enjoying it, and doing the best I could. And then there was another red flag. I remember partway into that session after the first red flag, and I remember coming up the hill after Paddock Hill Bend and just seeing absolute carnage. A few cars in the gravel. One looked like it was pretty badly damaged. I don't think it took part for the remainder of the weekend because it was so badly damaged. And that was my first insight into how serious motorsport could be. But after that, finished the qualifying session. It went quite well. I had no idea where I was because I was just happy to be there. One of the other drivers said to me, who's Stevens? Oh, Aaron, is that you? Come and take a look. You've qualified 8th. And words to that effect. That wasn't verbatim, but he told me I qualified 8th. And out of 20, or I think we had like 33 drivers on the grid for that weekend. I might be mistaken, but for me to qualify 8th out of 33 in those damn conditions for my first ever race was just unbelievable to me. I came in with zero expectations, so I was beyond happy to get that result. It was absolutely amazing to me. So from there on, I was just really happy. There were a few hours from that qualifying session until the race, and I remember having lunch before the race with my dad, because my dad had come to watch me for that first ever race, and I'm not really someone who's got that nervous since they were a child, but I remember the last hour before that race I was so nervous, like more nervous than I'd ever been. So I remember when we were called to the assembly area before that first race. So the assembly area is an area where the cars and the drivers come together and assemble really around half an hour before the scheduled start of the race. And it's quite a nerve-wracking experience because literally you're just sitting there for half an hour waiting to go out onto track. And even though I was excited, I wouldn't say I was scared, but I was just wondering what on earth would happen mainly. And the main thing being that I'd never actually practiced a start in the Caterham before. So when I'd driven it on the road, I'd started it taken off from the traffic lights as normal as you would do in a road car, but I'd never done a racing start in the car before. And one of the things about the starting grid at Brands Hatch, especially where I was, is that it's on a slope. And bearing in mind, you have to bear in mind that race cars do not have a handbrake, so it's not like when you're doing a hill start in a road car and you have the handbrake on and then you get the bike point, and once you've got that, let go of the handbrake and then you're off. In a race car, you have to use all three pedals simultaneously in a certain way in order to get the best start. So that was what I was thinking of mainly. So we get to the grid, we grid up, do the formation lap. To be honest with you, I can't actually really remember the start because it was just a whirlwind. But I did get an okay start, so I started 8th and got a bit of wheel spin, but the start was nowhere near as bad as I thought. I'd only lost, I think, 2 places off the grid. And so, yeah, I stayed in 10th. And like I said, that first race was a bit of a blur. If I try and think back to it, I can't remember any specific real moments. Because I think mainly because when you're in that situation, you're just so focused. But yeah, I just remember focusing on the task at hand, doing quite well. Remembering that this was my first race, and I was a rookie. So my main aim was just to finish the race to get that signature for my race license. But it was a race full of incident. I recall going through Druids at the top of the circuit on the first lap and seeing one of my other competitors had suffered massive damage with his car. That was damage that eventually led to a red flag, a race stoppage, and I was just thinking that I was okay. Thinking if he was okay, he was, and then. So I had that to deal with in my first race as well, seeing a few other incidents, then having to deal with a race restart as well after the red flag. So re-gridding up on the start again, and then starting in 10th where I was. So we re-grid up, start the race as normal, or start the race again, and then I experience what I considered to be my worst nightmare, and being caught up in someone else's accident really, and being taken out on the first corner of the restart. It's unfortunate, I think one of my competitors, looking back at the footage from another angle, had simply lost control of his car on the inside of me, coming into the first corner, Paddock Hill Bend, and where he just lost control. Where I was on the outside, I literally had nowhere to go but into the gravel with him. And then as we stopped in the gravel, I received a bit of an impact on my car, I remember, and that was it, my race over, my first ever race. I had a DNF, which at the time, if I'm honest with you, was I annoyed? I wouldn't say I was actually that annoyed, to be honest with you. I think I was just bewildered at the whole thing. What I remember most vividly from that experience was just driving, minding my business, all of a sudden being forced off the road in a cloud of gravel and dust, feeling a massive knock on the right hand side of my car, so worrying about damage, and then coming to a rest in the gravel and thinking, okay, that's it, what do I do now? So I just stayed in the car until the marshals came, and then they ushered me out of the car, saw that I had some exhaust damage, and my car was just left there for the rest of the race. And so I was just worried about other cars spinning off into the gravel and potentially crashing into it and causing more damage. But so after that, my main focus was just on, number one, getting the damage to my car fixed, and after that, getting it cleaned because it was absolutely filthy. Gravel all on the inside, caked in the dust from the gravel. So that was that. And that was a learning experience in itself. So after the race had finished, I was towed out of the gravel and told to drive off of the racing line and on the grass because my car was full of gravel, and the marshals didn't want me to put any gravel onto the track, which was a learning experience for me as well. So I got back to the paddock and then sought to get my car fixed. And took it to the Caterham garage, which is where I saw quite a few other cars that had been damaged that weekend. And at that moment, I didn't know how much those repairs would have been. But I spoke to another driver and whose car was in that repair, what I call the repair centre, yeah, he told me, it was a solid, 4-figure sum. And, when I saw the damage he had and how much it cost him, my mouth dropped. I was like, wow, this is, serious business, right? Because that figure that he shared with me was more than what I was advised to budget in terms of damage for the whole season. So that got me thinking, wow, okay, yeah, this could be very costly in terms of damage. But yeah, I got my car fixed. It was literally a 5-minute job to replace my exhaust silencer. Still cost me a few £100, and was focused on the race for the next day. So I remember just getting to the track really early the next day, about 7 a.m, and worked on cleaning my car, making it look presentable. Thankfully, one of my fellow racers had a contraption that was used for washing cars. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a manual washing machine, or manual. You had to pump it, and then it was attached to a hose and brush. Forgive me for not knowing the proper name for it, but that was nice of him, and I had some help from one of my fellow drivers' sons as well, which was great. And that showed me how much of a community the paddock was, because even though you're racing against each other, everyone's there to help each other out. 99% of people that are there to help each other out, I would say. So that was really, really nice. The difficult second chapter where it got real, basically.
Yes, I've got so much to share about my season that I couldn't possibly fit everything into one episode, so please look out for part 2 very soon. Please give us a thumbs up if you liked what you saw, and subscribe to be notified when part 2 is released. See you soon.